A clear Saturday in late September. Central Japan. Mount Ontake, 3,067 meters, with the autumn color at its peak on the slopes below. Several hundred people are on the mountain. It is a good day for it. Thin bright air, red and gold running down the valleys, and the ordinary noise of a crowded summit at midday. People are eating lunch, cameras are out. At 11:52, the ground under them opens. There is no lava, no fire, no warning of any kind. 63 of these people will not come down. The instruments had been recording something for more than 2 weeks. That morning, the mountain's alert level was 1. Normal. Mount Ontake is the second highest volcano in Japan, after Fuji. It stands on the border of Nagano and Gifu prefectures, and it is one of the 100 famous mountains of Japan, which in practice means that on a good weekend a great many people will be walking up it. Two things about this mountain pull against each other, and both of them matter. The first is that it is sacred. Pilgrims have climbed Ontake for centuries. There are shrines along the routes, stone markers, small statues, a shrine building at the summit itself. People come here to worship, and they have been coming for a very long time. The second is that it is easy. There is a ropeway that lifts you to well over 2,000 meters before you take a single step. There are maintained trails, there are mountain huts at the 7th station, the 8th, the 9th, serving hot food, selling drinks, offering a bed. Families come, day packs, trainers, a thermos. It is a walk with a shrine at the top. People did not treat Ontake as a volcano. They treated it as a hike. Which brings us to the mechanism, because the whole of this story sits on one distinction. A magmatic eruption is the kind everyone pictures. Lava, fountains, a red glow at night. That kind of eruption announces itself, and it usually announces itself for weeks. Magma rising through rock pushes the ground outward, and instruments measure the swelling. It cracks rock as it moves, and that produces a continuous shudder called volcanic tremor. It releases gas, and the gas changes composition. Modern volcano monitoring is built to catch exactly those three things. What happened on Ontake was not that, it was phreatic. Underneath the summit sits a hydrothermal system, groundwater held under pressure in hot rock, sealed in by minerals that have slowly cemented the cracks above it. If that seal fails, the water does not boil. It flashes, it becomes steam in an instant, expanding to many times its volume, and it blows the lid off from the inside. No magma reaches the surface. And because no magma moves, the ground does not swell, the tremor does not start, and the gases do not shift the way the textbooks say they should. The eruption you can forecast is the one made of lava. This mountain was not going to make that kind. And there is a second reason nobody was thinking about this, which goes back 35 years, until 1979. Japanese volcanology classified Ontake as dormant, and a good many specialists would have said extinct. There were no eruptions anywhere in the historical record. Centuries of pilgrims had walked to the summit and written about it, and none of them had ever described the mountain doing anything at all. Then, in 1979, it erupted. Phreatic, ash, no deaths. And it was a genuine shock to the field, because a mountain that had been filed under finished had just demonstrated that the filing was wrong. What followed was a reassessment, not just of Ontake, but of volcanoes across Japan, and the geological survey of the ground around this one came back with an answer that nobody had expected. Ontake had produced at least 4 major magmatic eruptions in the past 10,000 years, and it had produced 11 phreatic eruptions of the kind seen in 1979. The record was there the entire time. It was written in the rock rather than in the archives, and until someone went and looked, the mountain's silence had been mistaken for the mountain being over. Small events followed in 1991, another in 2007, minor, phreatic, nobody hurt. That last one, 2007, becomes the number everything else is measured against. On the 10th of September 2014, the seismometers on Ontake counted 52 volcanic earthquakes in a single day. The next day, the 11th, they counted 85. That was a change, and it was not a small one. The mountain had not produced more than 50 tremors in a day since monitoring began ahead of the 2007 event. 7 years of quiet, and then 2 days of this. The Japan Meteorological Agency runs a 5-level alert scale for active volcanoes. Level 1 means normal. The mountain is open, the trails are open, and nothing is communicated to anyone walking on it. Level 2 closes the area around the crater. 3 restricts the mountain itself. The decision to move between them is a judgment call, made by people looking at instruments. Here is what those people were looking at. There was no crustal deformation, the ground was not swelling, and the instruments that measure that were steady. There was no volcanic tremor at all, which is the signal that usually means magma is on the move. The low-frequency earthquakes that did occur were far fewer than the ones that had preceded 2007, and after the 11th, the seismicity fell away again. The mountain went quiet. On that basis, the alert level stayed at 1 now. The accounts of this eruption conflict, and it is worth saying so plainly, rather than picking the version that sounds better. Summaries written afterwards often state there were no significant earthquakes to warn anyone. The agency's own counts, and the record produced later in court, show a clear spike in the first half of September. Between the 12th and the 26th, more than 100 low-frequency events were recorded, a figure that comes from the litigation. Both of those things are true at once, and the honest version sits between them. The signal was in the data, it was read by people whose job is to read it, and it was judged not to mean what, in hindsight, it meant. Nobody knew an eruption was coming. That needs to be said clearly. Not the agency, not the hut keepers, not the local government. 2 weeks of elevated numbers on a mountain that had gone quiet again is not a prediction. It is a question that was answered wrongly. The alert level was raised to 3:44 minutes after the eruption. Meanwhile, the calendar did what the calendar does. The last weekend of September, the foliage at its best, clear weather forecast. The huts were full, the ropeway was running. It is 11:52 on Saturday the 27th of September. At the summit, the crowd is at its thickest, because the summit is where you eat lunch. Bright jackets against gray rock. Conversation. The shutter noise of a few dozen cameras. Then the sound, survivors reached for the same word afterwards, again and again. Thunder. One described it as a boom, and then another boom, rolling. Another said that the noise came first and the darkness came second, and that between them there was almost nothing at all. What a phreatic eruption does to the people standing on top of it is not what the word volcano suggests. There is no lava. There is no fireball, no wall of flame, nothing to run from that you can see coming. There is rock. The explosion strips out the vent and throws what was in it upward. Fragments 10 centimeters across, fragments several tens of centimeters across. Angular, dense, heavy pieces of the mountain, launched clear of the crater and coming down across the summit area at speeds cited as high as 300 kilometers an hour. That is motorway speed, arriving from above onto open ground. The damage from those impacts was later mapped, and it concentrated within roughly 500 meters of the vents, which is precisely the ground that the summit path crosses, and precisely where the huts stand, and precisely where several hundred people were standing on a clear Saturday at lunchtime. There was no cover, there was no time to reach any. Then the ash. The column climbs kilometers into a sky that had been perfectly clear 10 seconds earlier. Pyroclastic flows run down the slopes as a gray mass moving faster than a person, and the daylight goes completely, the way daylight goes in a tunnel. Ash falls 2 to 3 millimeters thick across a wide area. Near the summit, it drifts to half a meter. One man described a hot wind hitting his back and crouching down, and being certain he was about to die. A woman described being buried to the knees, and 2 people ahead of her on the path who appeared already dead. A woman of 73, asked afterwards what separated the people who came down from the people who did not, said that it was a matter of 1 or 2 seconds. When the bodies were examined, all but one showed injuries consistent with being struck by rock. The exception died from inhaling hot air. That is the fact this disaster turns on, and it is worth sitting with for a moment, because it is not what anyone expects a volcano to do. Ontake did not kill with lava. It did not kill with heat. It did not kill with gas. It threw stones at people. Just below the peak stood a lodge, and in that lodge was a member of staff named Shuichi Muki. He later described what happened to Reuters. Ash banked against the door so quickly that for a time they could not get it open. The building filled with people who had come in off the path. He put the number at perhaps 150. Some of the children were crying. Most people, he said, were calm. They waited there in hard hats until word came that it was safe to go down. In another hut, a 25-year-old employee described about 40 climbers gathered on the ground floor. They put themselves in the center of the room, away from the walls. They put on helmets, those who had them. Those who did not took what was available. And what was available in a mountain hut is the kitchen. So some of them sat there holding cooking pans over their heads. Rocks came through the ceiling above them. Hot wind and ash came in through the holes the rocks had made, and the temperature in the room climbed. Before they made the descent, he sent a final message to his family. Consider what that adds up to as a piece of engineering: a wooden building, a hard hat, and a saucepan, against rock arriving at the speed of a car. It was not much, it was the entire margin. The huts, and the helmets that were kept in them are the reason there were any survivors at the summit at all. Everyone in the open had whatever they happened to be wearing. The next morning, military helicopters lifted 7 people off the mountain. What followed was one of the more difficult recovery operations Japan has run. More than 1,100 people took part: firefighters, police, and self-defense force troops. They were working at 3,000 meters in September, turning to October, on a volcano that had not stopped erupting. The ground was the first problem. Rescuers described the fresh ash as a bottomless swamp, and some of them sank into it to the chest. Half a meter of loose ash lying over broken rock on a slope, with more falling. On the 28th, the day after, searchers found more than 30 people near the summit in what the Japanese formulation calls cardiac arrest. That phrase is not evasion. Under Japanese practice, a doctor certifies death. So until one does, that is the wording used, including in official statements and the press. Then the mountain interrupted them, repeatedly. On the 29th, the search was suspended over hydrogen sulfide, which was pooling at concentrations the teams could not work in. Seismic activity picked up again at the end of the month and stopped them a second time. On the 5th and 6th of October, Typhoon Fanfone arrived and closed the mountain entirely. Work was possible only in short windows, and the windows were decided by the mountain rather than by the teams. A day would begin and be called off before 8 in the morning, and the teams would come back down and wait. Then there was the ash itself as a search problem. Anyone lying under half a meter of it is not visible from above, and not visible from 10 meters away either, which is why an operation of this size took as long as it did over an area that a person can walk across in an afternoon. The count climbed in steps between the interruptions. 47 by the 1st of October, 51 by the 4th, 54 by the 7th. The final figure is 63, and it carries a qualifier that has to travel with it every time it is used. That number includes 5 people who were never found. The searches were suspended for the winter and resumed the following summer, once the snow cleared, with troops flown in to support them. They ended with those 5 still on the mountain. It was the deadliest volcanic eruption in Japan since Mount Onzen in 1991. In January 2017, the relatives of 5 of the dead sued the national government, the meteorological agency, and Nagano Prefecture, seeking damages of around 150 million yen. Their argument was narrow and specific. The alert level should have been raised in September, and had it been raised, the people they lost would not have been standing there. The district court examined the monitoring system and found real shortcomings in it, in the equipment, and in the procedure. Then it dismissed the claim. No compensation. The prefecture was cleared over the maintenance of the seismographs. On the 21st of October 2024, the Tokyo High Court upheld that dismissal, and went further than the court below it had. It set aside the finding that agency officials had been negligent at all, holding that the failure to warn was not a proximate cause of the deaths. 10 years of proceedings. A system found to have flaws and nobody found responsible. The mountain is open again, in stages. The summit area was closed for years. The Ontake route, which runs up to the ridge called Hachodorumi, stayed shut until the end of July 2023, 9 years after the eruption. Of the victims recovered from the mountain, around 80% were found along that route. There are concrete shelters on the summit ridge now, placed at intervals, built for exactly one purpose. Climbers are expected to file a notice before they go up, to know where the nearest shelter is, and to carry a helmet and wear it. That last one is written on the hut websites, plainly, next to the opening hours. The huts are still there. The ropeway still runs. The colors still turn in late September, and people still come up in their hundreds to see them. What this eruption established is narrower and colder than a lesson. A steam explosion can arrive without the signature that monitoring is designed to find. On a clear Saturday at lunchtime, the best protection available at the top of Mount Ontake was a wooden hut and a saucepan. It is a day hike. It was always a volcano.